Hey guys, I'm Chris Buck and a very warm welcome to Friday Fretworks, and this week we're going to be taking a look at my 3 favourite ways of using delay pedals, and I guess by extension of that, my 3 tips for getting the most out of yours. Now, my history with delay pedals is a little bit of a checkered one, if I'm entirely honest. It probably stretches back to, come to think of it, the first pedal I ever bought, which was a Boss DD3. I'd read that Slash used one frequently, didn't know what for or how he used it, but I knew that he used one, and ergo knew that I needed one. To be honest, for the most part, it sat relatively unused for quite a long time. I didn't know what I was meant to do with it. As I said, I didn't quite know how Slash used it, beyond kind of being able to play the intro Welcome to Jungle. I didn't really get a lot of use out for it for a very long time, until I joined my first kind of proper band, I guess, where we were writing our own songs and gigging. Finally got my head around the fact that delay pedals work particularly well underneath solos. Now, I'm going to reference back to the intro clip that you saw at the start of this video. What wasn't probably as apparent as it will be in this next clip is how high the delay is mixed, which is what is going to bring me on to my kind of first bit of advice in a minute. But to show you that intro clip again, but with some of the backing track taken out, sounds a little bit like this. Which brings me to my first point or bit of advice, is that number 1, it's louder than you think. 99% of the time, I can guarantee if you go and dig out any isolated track or isolated stem from a guitar track or album that you feel you're particularly familiar with, I can guarantee there will be infinitely more reverb or delay or whatever the specific effect is on it than you'd expected it to be. The reason for this is it helps tracks sit within the context of a mix that little bit better, and because of so much else going on in the mix, you have to be a little bit more dramatic in your application of effects. It's like stage makeup. There has to be more of it because it has to be seen from the back of the room. Now, I found a great little clip from that pedal show recently where Mick is talking about this exact thing.
And it's one thing to say about mixes that you can quite often add lots and lots and lots and lots of reverb and delay, as long as it's the right reverb and delay to sort of tie it all together.
Yeah.
And clearly not in every genre or in every style of music, but I'm always surprised when I hear stems.
How effective they are.
How wet it can be.
Yeah.
Now, the context to this point has kind of been around lead lines or solos, but the same could very much be said of rhythm parts. Adding a short delay, not mixed too high, or a longer delay where the feedback or the repeats aren't that prominent, really helps give a kind of natural room-like ambience, especially within the context of a mix. I'm going to take a track of mine now, or a track of Buck and Evans called Going Home, which again is not necessarily a track, if you're familiar with it, where you would have associated the sound with a bit of a slapback delay. But by isolating 1 or 2 bits of the track from the backing track itself, gives you a better idea of how prominent that mix actually is. Now, taking that thought process then to the nth degree and really cracking the mix control can take an otherwise kind of relatively simple rhythm part and turn it into something infinitely cooler and infinitely more interesting. And one of my favourite examples of this is a particularly Stonesy-esque vibe on the Sheryl Crow track, My Favourite Mistake, where the mix is really noticeable. Number 2 is to use delay as a creative tool. Now, I do this as frequently as I can. Put on a delay sound that is rather unusual or rather throws me out of my comfort zone. Maybe there's slightly more mix than I would be ordinarily accustomed to. Maybe there's more feedback. It doesn't really matter. If there's something which inspires me to create something different, then that is a fantastic use of delay. Now, hopefully we can all agree that whether we like U2 or not, the Edge is a fantastic exponent of delay pedals and rack-mounted delay units. And at this point, it's pretty much synonymous with that dotted eighth rhythm. Now, as I said, whether you like U2 or the Edge or not, doesn't really matter, to be honest. I think we can all agree that that dotted eighth, very regimented, very structured delay pattern spawned no end of classic riffs and tracks for the Edge that probably wouldn't have been written otherwise. Now, as I said, this is something I try and do as frequently as I can. And one particular example of a guitar track in a track or in a song that absolutely wouldn't have been born or I wouldn't have come up with had I not been playing around with delay pedal is the instrumental part for the middle of Slow Train. Sounds a little bit like this. And then lastly, at number 3, we have volume swells. Now, if this is not something that you've come across before, it's entirely forgivable. It's a relatively kind of niche effect, I guess, but is one that is undoubtedly over all of your favourite records in some respect. Now, this is something I first heard on John Martyn's Hurt in Your Heart when I was quite young. Famous Echoplex, obviously John Martyn, but I was a little bit too young to appreciate what was going on or how that was a sound that could be created. It was only years later when I came across what is kind of one of my favourite tracks of all time, I'm the Highway by Audioslave. Tom Morello's fantastic guitar part at the start of that track just got me thinking outside the box, really, and what I could do with my delay pedal and what cranking the mix and the feedback is capable of achieving. Now, there's numerous ways of utilising this effect, whether we're talking lead lines, a la Slash's guitar part in the middle of Strange, the Guns N' Roses track, or more commonly for me at least, whether we're using it on chord patterns or chord progressions. Now, as I said, I'm a huge fan of I'm the Highway, and I guess it's my own kind of little sort of homage to that was the intro part of a track called Fix You on the first Buck and Evans album, which came out last November. Plug, plug. Sounds a little bit like this.
Wait for a minute, I'm telling this story, my friend. 'Cause you and me are in it, we're going round in circles again. Jokers on the table, king is sitting tight. Shuffle all the players, find a diamond heart tonight, and I'll fix you. You'll be okay in a while.
So there you have it. Hopefully this video was of some use to you. Just 3 of the ways in which I very frequently, very commonly use delay pedals. As I said, whether it's cranking the mix control slightly above what you would have ordinarily anticipated, whether we're talking volume swells, or whether we're talking unusual delay parts to try and throw yourself out of your comfort zone. It's one of those effects that, considering I didn't really understand what I was meant to do with it very early on, it's become an integral part of my playing, and no doubt is an effect that a lot of you guys use to fantastic results as well. So, as ever, I've been Chris Buck. This is Friday Fretworks. Please subscribe and ring the bell if you haven't already, and I shall see you next week for another video. Cheers, guys. Take care. Wash your hands. See you soon.